My YouTube channel. I'm Brittany, the head instructor and co-founder of Mordhau Historical Combat in Mesa, Arizona. I was recently invited to be an instructor at the Vancouver International Swordplay Symposium in Vancouver, Canada. While also being an instructor, I was given the opportunity to do some cutting demonstrations at their gala on the Saturday night. So I've compiled some videos here of some of my cutting that I had done. Thank you so much for watching, and I hope that you enjoy. Welcome to my YouTube channel. I'm Brittany, the head instructor and co-founder of Mordhau Historical Combat in Mesa, Arizona. I was recently invited to be an instructor at the Vancouver International Swordplay Symposium in Vancouver, Canada. While also being an instructor, I was given the opportunity to do some cutting demonstrations at their gala on the Saturday night. So I've compiled some videos here of some of my cutting that I had done. Thank you so much for watching, and I hope that you enjoy. Welcome to my YouTube channel. I'm Brittany, the head instructor and co-founder of Mordhau Historical Combat in Mesa, Arizona.
Hey everyone, welcome to Chalk Talk. I'm Spencer,
And I'm Kyle.
and we're going to get into it. Today we have a super special guest for you to introduce you to. It is Brittany St. Leafy. Thank you so much for coming on the show today. We really appreciate it.
Thank you so much for having me. It is my absolute pleasure to be here.
So, just a little bit of background for you guys. Brittany is the head instructor and co-founder of Mordhau HEMA. She's a passionate martial artist who brings attention in the form and function. She's also recognized international HEMA instructor, accomplished competitor, testament and success to her multiple medals in longsword cutting and more.
Yep. Brittany also holds a bachelor's degree in medieval history and is the co-organizer of the Valley of the Sun cutting tournaments. And she is also a former member of the HEMA Alliance Governing Council. So Brittany, you have like this awesome resume, there's tons of info, but what made you first want to pick up a sword and sword fight? Like, what was that like thing that you're like, yep, swords, that's my thing, gotta do it?
Oh, well, that goes back. I think everybody has like their very nerdy origin story. Like as a kid, I saw this thing and, I have the most like uninteresting story. I was a kid. I was watching Xena. I grew up playing Dungeons and Dragons on my dad's lap. Like it was a natural thing as I got older, and then I started my University of Calgary degree doing medieval, and then it was just sort of like just snowballed from there.
That's so cool. And I think you saying it's boring. That's not boring at all because I know it definitely it segues from mine. Like watching Hercules and watching Xena. That's what really started my whole. I'm like, this is really cool. So totally get it.
Yeah, I have so many fond memories of like that Hercules Xena back to back period, and like watching that with my little brother and just getting into it. Who was your favorite Greek god from the Hercules and Xena series?
Oh, Callisto? Callisto?
Yeah,
I
yeah.
think. Was that her name or was it Calypso? Now I don't
Oh, it was
remember.
Calypso. It was Calypso.
Yes, and she was like this like angry blonde dominatrixy weird character. That's not me at all. And then I totally grew into that, and I was like, well,
Well, some things
Like,
nurture nature.
I just
Learning.
sort of accidentally channeled that character by just being like kind of sassy and mean to people, and I was like, oh wow, I no wonder I liked her that whole time. I had no idea.
That's so cool. And to profound, actually talk more about that and swords, and obviously we know where you first learned about it or what you liked learning about it. But what would you say is your favorite weapon, and why is it the longsword?
leading
It doesn't have to be.
question.
Sorry, I won't lead the witness. I won't lead the witness. What's your favorite weapon?
Um, that's actually a really hard one for me. It would probably be pole arms, honestly.
Excellent.
Yeah, longsword has sort of been my bag for as long as I can remember. Um,
Mhm.
and I'm not sure like exactly why. That was just like within the historical European martial arts community, that's sort of like the
Yeah.
go-to. Everybody does that, and
Mhm.
it was just very easy to do it for many, many years. But I'm a big fan of pole arms. I think it's so devastating.
Do you have like a specific pole arm you like? Is there like one that stands out? Because there's like a wide variety of pole arms, you know.
There are. No, I'm not that particular. Anything that is just falls into the category. I like my halberds. I like my bardishes. I like
Mhm.
hooks. I
Yeah.
like
All right.
like you know all of them.
Jason, could you actually put our picture up there? We have just a picture of when the ACS medal and should put the picture of your little axe and halberd up there, so people can just take a look at that while we're talking some more about it. So it's just cool. It's just all in its majesty. I love it. No, halberds are awesome and pole arms. It's when people really look, they're like, I just like a pole arm, and you're like, what type of pole arm? And it's such a big organization, like category of weapons.
Yeah,
So it's really
sure.
cool.
And it's one of those things where, like, within the HEMA community, we're very fortunate to have had a lot of study go into the typologies. So you've got the Oakshott typology, and then I think the Elmsley typology for single hand swords. And we don't really have that for pole arms. So there's sort of like, it's hard to categorize because, like, I've definitely seen pole arms that are like, well, is that a halberd or like what exactly is that, right? So it's like kind of exciting that there's a lot of crossover and there's no such thing as like a halberd that is just purely a halberd, right? There's so
Yeah,
many
there's no typical.
right. Yeah, I think that's kind of why I like them because the technical application of them is pretty like constant across the board. If you know how to use a pole arm, or if you know how to use a halberd, you know how to use a bardiche. If you know how to use a bardiche, you know how to use a volge. Like it's just very systemic, and I think that's what makes it really exciting for me. Is like, oh yeah, I can train stick thing, and it just applies.
Yes, and I think how you transgress and you're like, if you know how to use this, you know how to use that needs to be on a T-shirt first of all. So you should put that on your something where like, if you know how to use this, and, dodge a wrench, dodge a ball. I don't know, but that's a really good point.
Yeah.
Cool, thank you, Kyle.
Yeah.
What else?
Do you? Well, hold on. I want to ask one more question.
Sure,
Do you think that like, so every HEMA tournament is like longsword? That's the one that everyone joins. You know what I mean? It's like the big event usually. Do you think that pole arms are going to grow in size? Do you think that's going to be like a category that? No.
No.
Why is that?
No. Unfortunately, due to the nature of like how HEMA sportively not so HEMA is sort of split between two camps, right? There's the sportive side and then there's the academic side. And ideally your approach is holistic and you do both, but a lot of people are one or the other. They're either a martial artist or they're there to compete. And the competitive side usually deals with unarmored fighting. And in order to do pole arms, the equipment that we have available at this time with unarmored fighting doesn't allow for pole arms to be used safely in any sort of competitive aspect. Like you can spar it really slow, really controlled with somebody that you trust, but you can't add the element of competition to something like pole arms without like armor, for example, which is why I started Gooher.
Yeah, that's
I
a
think
really
that's
good
perfect.
point.
That's a perfect point, because even though when you're like, hey, let's start off, let's go 50%, it ends up going faster. And
Right.
get hurt.
Yeah.
And then you need armor to stop you from getting everything smashed.
Yeah. Yeah, I've definitely had some unfortunate accidents with a quarterstaff where I wasn't paying attention and I missed where the position was for my guard and it came down right on top of my head and I was like out cold.
Oh no!
Yeah, so it was a big stick. Like it wasn't even like there was nothing on the end of it. It was just a stick. It's just a really big stick. So, physics happened and you can't be too careful with that in the HEMA community because all we're using is fencing masks. It's not really safe to do it outside of a very, very tightly controlled environment, unfortunately. But I do see pole arms gaining a lot more popularity in like just training and study. But in order to actually apply that, with non-compliant partners for sport with something like medals or glory on the line, people get a little crazy and
Yep,
it's just
absolutely. So, Brittany, let me jump to the next question. We did the Art and Armor Symposium, Matt Blazek's History Northeast group, like a month ago, and it came up that we both have medieval bachelor's degrees.
Yeah.
I was like, I've never met anyone else that has one, so I was like pretty pumped about that.
Yeah.
What was like the incentive to get that? What made you be like, I'm not going to do communications like every single other human being that's 18 years old. I'm gonna get medieval history. And I'm sorry if you chose communications first. I wasn't a dig at you.
No, it's funny because my husband has a communications degree, so
Oh man, it's just such a common one. It seems like whenever I meet someone, like, oh yeah, communications. Oh,
it
okay.
is. No, so I actually kind of have I don't know if it's a funny story or kind of a sad story. It's certainly not cool. I really liked medieval history, obviously, but I was sort of in that generation where my parents were like, "You have to go to university. Like, you don't have a choice. You have to. If you don't get a degree, you're not going to get a job." That didn't turn out to be true, but that was my generation. And I didn't do very well in school. I had really bad grades in math, like really bad. But I was very good at social studies and history and all the fun stuff, And so to appease my parents, I graduated early. So I started university at 17, and I went into the only degree program that would accept me, and that was the University of Calgary's Ancient and Medieval History, because they would accept my very low math score, and it sort of was just that was it. And then I, kind of ran with it and fell in love with it. And then I was like, oh, I'm so glad I did this. This is perfect for me. But my original intention was not like, oh, I'm so passionate about, medieval history. Like, no, I was like, I just need to get into school and I don't know what I'm doing.
That's so funny. That's like the opposite at Indiana University where I went. You have to take this really difficult mathematics course called finite that has this like atrocious dropout level because it was like ridiculously difficult. And they're like, yeah, anyone who's an arts major of any kind, well, they'll be fine taking this class. And it was like this ongoing joke of like how rough it is. I wish they would have been okay with my terrible math. That would have been awesome. I went to, I should have gone to your school. That's what I should have done.
Well, they closed the loophole like the year after I had started. So I'd gotten in, and then the very next year they closed that loophole, and I was like, whew.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
That's pretty cool, and I totally understand with the whole. I don't know if it's some sword people or just the martial arts. Like math is just it's interesting. You get into the geometry, the physics. I understand that a lot, but schooling and I'm like,
Yeah, I feel like now after doing like sword stuff for, more than 10 years, I'm like, I understand physics. I understand geometry. Like, it makes sense. But you asked me that as a 17-year-old who had no idea what she was doing with her life, and I was like, I don't know A and B and Pythagorean, whatever. Like, I had no idea.
Who's that? I don't know Pythagorean. Get out of here. Well, I don't think it's a bad thing. So I think it's awesome. This is the route that you took, and it's really nice that where you've ended now, because it's the journey that matters more, right? Especially
Yeah.
journey when at ACS Nationals. I didn't get a chance to really talk to you a lot because I was very much so like I got to do this today and we're on, and I saw you and I was like, oh, but we're all busy doing stuff. Um, what did you think of it? Did you think it was different than HEMA as far as the harness Vectin? Or I'm not sure if I pronounce it
You're good.
correctly. Okay,
No, you're good.
Kyle
Um,
tries to set me up.
it was super different in a lot of ways. First, I had a great time. Everybody was really nice to me. Walking in as like a HEMA person, no one was like rude to me or anything. Not that I expected it. There's this sort of undercurrent of animosity between the two communities that is, palpable, but it's not like immediately apparent. Like, you don't just roll up on a Boo Hurt tournament and somebody's like, "Oh, you're a HEMA person." Like,
Like, get
what?
the tomatoes. Throw the tomatoes at them. No,
Right?
no.
Yeah, it's not like that. But I definitely had a little bit of anxiety going into that, being, a relatively accomplished HEMA fighter, and wondering like, oh, do people expect anything of me coming into this? Like, do they think that I'm like judging them, like from the HEMA perspective? Do they think I'm walking in being like, oh, these crayon eaters, like.
You're like Neanderthals. We'll see how you do today. No.
Yeah, I certainly tried to come into it with an open mind, and people were very, very kind to me. Some of the differences are like the obvious ones, obviously, like the rules are different and the goals are way different. Like,
Mhm.
the HEMA community is sort of, I can't speak for the whole community, but generally
Right.
speaking, kind of like appalled at the idea of pain compliance.
Yeah, I think you said that perfectly.
Yeah, like, I understand from a historical perspective, from a martial perspective, that is absolutely valid. Like, that's a real
Mhm.
thing. And I think a lot of the HEMA community can sometimes miss out on that and don't really understand the depth of how valuable that is. But at the same time, I understand their reservations because we're not wearing armor, we're wearing padded stuff. So our level of pain compliance, like that threshold is like significant for us. You hit too hard through a padded jacket with a longsword, you'll break someone's forearm if you're not
Yeah,
careful,
100%.
Yeah.
right? So whereas with armor, it's a little different. You can take those hits, and now it's just attrition. Like, you're like, okay, I can get through one more, but it doesn't always just result in absolutely debilitating injuries. And that's not to say that they happen, because I've definitely seen some stuff. Um,
Like,
you
I've
know,
seen stuff. I like it. Yeah, yeah.
yeah, like, but for me, it was really eye opening how when I go into HEMA tournaments, I don't want to sound like too into myself, but I'm pretty dominant, or I was when I was really, really competitive back in the day.
That's fair to say. You've won a lot of medals.
Yeah,
Like to
And
say
it's
you
not
win,
bragging if
that's
it's
not
true.
bragging. Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah.
I was very dominant, and I'm not a big person at all. I'm 5'6" and 105 on a good day. Like, I'm small, but I was able to be very dominant in my sport. And I go into the Boo Hurt stuff. I did the nationals back in October, and it was a huge wake up call for me to be like, okay, I have the physical skills to swing a sword really well, to move a shield really well, to move a pole arm really well, but I do not have the physical ability to do all of those things in armor. It's an entirely different world,
Yes.
Mhm.
Yes.
and that sucked.
Well,
Like,
I'll let. Oh, go ahead. Go. No, I was gonna say. I think you did great, first of all, and even though I'm a Scadian slash also a traditional martial artist coming into the Bohurt world, so I totally am still kind of fringy eyes, or I'll be like, of course no one said anything, but then not everyone talks to me either.
right.
So I was just like, no, I think everyone's cool, and I think we're reaching this kind of, oh, I hope so, this slowly, this paramount where everyone's just like, hey, sword stuff's cool. I don't care if it's lightsabers. I don't care if it's whatever. I don't care if it's foam, boffer, LARP. But then when you come to this field, you're playing by the rules, and people just say,
Yeah.
hey, where do you line up?
Agreed, Spencer. Like the big thing that and Spencer, you and I talk about this all the time, is
Mhm.
people just need to play for the sport that they're in and understand the rules for that sport is its own thing. But that doesn't mean other sports that have different rules are worse or anything like that. They're gaining mastery at whatever the rule set is that they're playing in.
Yeah.
And that's, as long as they're having fun, that's what matters.
Yeah,
Yeah.
you start to see a lot more crossover between communities now, where it's like more and more common, where it's like, oh yeah, I do HEMA, I do Boohurt, I do SCA, I do all these things, as opposed to like being just very narrowly focused. And oddly enough, I think one of the driving factors for that is the Facebook group Sticks and Steel, which
Mm.
has like exploded. I remember when it just started and there was like maybe a dozen or so people, and then now it's like over 8,000 people, and just the level of respect and camaraderie, and people are bringing their own kind of flavor, and it's just become this big like soup of sword stuff. And I think it's awesome. I think what it's doing for all of the communities is really, really wonderful, because so many times, HEMA people kind of are like, ooh, so you did Boohurt? Like, how awful was it? Like, what? But then at the same time, I'll go to my HEMA school and I'm talking to the Boohurt guys and be like, well, it's a little different than what you do. You guys are like a little bit like soft compared to us Boohurt guys. And I'm like, what? What is wrong with everybody here? Like, and I think it's breaking down those barriers and finding the value in every system. It's all value.
Yep. Yeah, there's something valuable there in every one of them. So speaking of completely dead serious, 100% valuable life or death skill situation, Brittany, I need you to tell me about cutting in high heels. We've all seen this video. What brought that on, and what was it like?
Well, first, disclaimer, don't do it. Please.
You're not gonna have Spencer and I like meet you in this challenge?
I mean,
Well, not just telling me what to do. I'm going to try it.
That's right. You can't tell us what to do. Get the heels.
I tell you what to do. I also can't endorse anybody to do what I did. That's
Fair.
very irresponsible. No, it was actually totally unintentional to do it. There's sort of a story there. So I go to the Vancouver International Sword Symposium. I was invited as a guest instructor specifically to teach cutting. And they had said, hey, we'd really love to have you do a cutting demonstration for our gala, or like their party thing. And a bunch of people were presenting. There was some really cool, I think, like Chinese sword dance, I think. Oh, I hope I'm not wrong about that. Anyway, she did amazing. And like there's a guy who was like a magician with like disarms. Like, it was so cool.
Wow.
Anyway, so they're like, oh, do you want to do this thing? And I'm like, okay, sure, I'll cut in front of people. And I'm like so nervous. But I go to the gala. It's supposed to be like formal attire, so I dress up, I wear my heels. They get the cutting stand out already, and I cannot find my wrestling shoes, because I was just going to put my wrestling shoes on and do it in a dress, and it would look really goofy, but I was like, I can't, for two reasons. One, I was like, okay, if I die in front of a lot of people, so I can't have that. And the other reason was like, I don't want to endorse unsafe actions like cutting in high heels, because a lot of what I teach is, it's like a lot of what I teach in my classes is about like safety and never being complacent about sharps. So I'm like panicking. I'm like digging through my bag. I'm like moving people's stuff. I'm like, where are my shoes? Where are my shoes? And then my friend in Vancouver, Si Hong Fu, he was like, Brittany, you're late. Like, they're waiting for you. And it's dead silent. Like, they're waiting for you. You gotta go. And I'm like,
no.
And he's like, just do it in your heels. I was like, no. And he's like, think of how glorious it will be if you do.
Oh, the folly of many things, but true. But
he's right. He's right.
Yeah, he was right. He talks me into it, and I cut without stepping. Like, you'll notice my footwork is very static, and I don't actually move at all. But it ended up being just the most outrageous thing that I'd done. Not safe at all.
It's wild. Like for audience members, if you've never seen this video, you got to search it out. When I watched it, I'm like, she's really like it looks like you're posing because your legs are so extended from the heels. And I'm like, I've seen her in cut test videos. She doesn't do that like the dramatic poses, but I'm like, she's in heels. She has literally no choice. Like she does the cut, and that's the position she's stuck in.
Mm-hmm.
Man, that's crazy.
And it was like hardwood floors, so they were really slick.
Oh no.
Like for a couple of the cuts, you can kind of see like the ball of my foot like shift a little bit. And I was so afraid. And like my dad was there, which was really cool. And he'd never seen me do any of this in person before. Like he's seen videos, but that was the first time Dad was watching me like from the balcony. And I was like, oh my God, don't disappoint Dad. Don't disappoint Dad.
Yep.
Wow,
So, yeah.
you did awesome. And as they say, but did you die? You did not. So I think that's amazing.
I did okay. Yeah, it was wild.
So we only have like a little bit more. We were going to get into our new part, but Kyle, you said you wanted to have another part you wanted to do, or
I mean, we could ask more questions about sword fighting. I can always ask more questions.
Okay. So, do you think chainmail should be a fashion that is socially acceptable for casual wear?
Absolutely. What is that? How could you even wonder? That's like,
I mean, I love it. I just wish we saw it around more often.
yeah, I do it all the time.
I knew it.
Yeah.
Like, just wear like a long chainmail shirt, like a dress to the store, or what?
I mean, yeah, I would if I could. I have this huge like chainmail.
Oh, I think it's cutting out a sec.
Oh, no.
Oh, Brittany, we lost you for a second there.
Try again with the chainmail. It was super important. The world needs to know.
Oh, Brittany, we're losing your audio. Okay.
Maybe.
Right,
Oh, no.
okay.
Oh, I think you're back in.
Yes.
Yes. Okay, we can hear you.
Yeah, no, my Bluetooth on my phone is hooked up to my truck, and my husband just left with the truck to go teach class, and it
Okay.
with him. Sorry.
No, don't be. It's technology is always going to do what it wants to do. So, but we just want to make sure we heard chainmail. Like, so if Kyle said, would you just wear any type, or how would you change it?
Oh, yeah, I think so. Okay, I have to clarify that yes, chainmail can be like casually fashionable and acceptable,
I
but
dig that.
I also feel like there's a lot of cringe chainmail.
Not what I meant.
That's
No, not necessarily the chainmail bikini, or even for the guy the chainmail, whatever you call
Like
banana
loincloth
hammocks or
thing?
anything. No, we're talking about cool like
Yeah,
drapery.
I mean, I want like Norman chainmail with like a face mask. That's the chainmail I want to come back.
Or if I'm at the gym and how people they wear their belts and they're trying to do pull-ups and they're adding more, I'm like, no, just wear my chainmail shirt, bud. That's more weight. And then you're doing your weightlifting with chainmail, and they're like, huh, what are you doing with that? I'm like, why fight in this? And that would be really cool, actually.
yeah, I'm all about that. And I'm cool. Chainmail bikinis, channel that Red Sonja vibe. I'm all about that. Love it. I want the chainmail pauldrons, which is a weird thing, but I love it. Like the look of it. Like, oh yeah. Oh yeah.
It gets to fashion. It doesn't always have to make sense. It's fashion.
You're right. When it's fashion, that's different. That's not safety. It's fashion.
That's exactly. Yeah, I'm all about that. I actually have a really terrible story about chainmail fashion. If you want to hear it.
Go for it, please.
Yeah, definitely.
Okay. So I was young and naive, and I was contacted. Well, I think I had contacted them, but there was a posting on the Canadian equivalent of Craigslist. It was called Kijiji. And it was like looking for models for a medieval themed photo shoot. And I was like, Me. I was like 17. I didn't know what I was doing. Anyway, so I messaged them and I'm like, hey, really interested in this. I think it's cool. I have some swords, for your photo shoot. And they were like, yeah, we need like a headshot and like body measurements and everything. And I was like,
Mhm.
okay. They're like, do you have any modeling experience? I'm like, no. They're like, perfect. And I was like,
no.
okay, sure. So I sent it, I'm like, here's my stupid face, and I'm this tall, and they're like, cool, cool. How would you feel about doing like a chainmail bikini? And I was like Red Sonja? And they're like, yeah, absolutely. And I was like,
I had no
yeah.
idea.
They didn't care. I was like, yeah, let me do that. And the guy's like, do you want to come meet me for a fitting? Like, we're making the chainmail custom to the models, so do you want to come do this fitting? And I was like, oh my god, yes, that sounds amazing. And I also knew at least enough that I couldn't tell my mom. She would be mad at me. I was like, I just won't tell her.
Oh.
But I told some of my friends, and they're like, oh my god, Brittany, don't go alone. Don't do it. Don't go alone. So I didn't. I had to drive me. And I go, and it was just exactly the kind of person that you would think it is. Like,
No.
no.
the creepiest dude. But he had drawn sketches of what he wanted to make for this chainmail. And it was a chainmail bikini. It was black rings with like a fire pattern in the rings. And I looked at that and I was like, I can't do this. And he's like, well, what do you mean? You came all the way here. And I think he started to be like, oh, she's on to me. I'm a creep. And I'm like,
Oh.
Sonia would never wear that. That's too cringy. And I left. So
That's outstanding.
That's amazing.
yeah, that was my red flag. Not the fact that it was an entirely awful and possibly dangerous situation. It was
No,
Red Sonja would never wear anything that cringy.
you clearly don't understand Red Sonja, bro. Get out of here.
Right? Like, you're not a true nerd. So I was like, I was out.
That's
love it.
amazing.
Yeah, so
Oh wow.
probably a terrible story. I don't tell that
No,
one.
that's gonna rank up there as one of my favorite Chop Talk stories of all time.
The fact is true, it happened, and then it's still the standards, and also everything ended up okay. And people will be wondering, they're like, wait, what's your standards first?
Yeah, it was oof. And I was asking him like the gauge of the steel that he was using for it, and like he had no idea what he was doing. I was like, yeah, no, bro. Is this riveted? And he's like, and I'm like, ugh.
Oh, I love it.
I need flattened, welded only. Like you gotta demand the best out of your chainmail Red Sonja bikinis.
Yeah, you gotta have standards, guys. You gotta have standards.
So next, we're going to go with our sword nerd news. Jason, would you give us that graphic? So it's going to come by real quick. We're a little bit shorter than normal, but we're going to have to talk about this. We had the Star Wars Galactic Star Cruiser, where, let's say, Brittany, if they were ever like, hey, we need you to dress up in this garb, maybe bring your lightsaber, and go do basically D&D/Star Wars style, would you do it?
Yeah.
Yes, no brainer.
Now, have you heard about the Galactic Star Cruiser yet? Have you heard about any of that information?
I haven't. I am not in the loop. I've been head down in like 3 feet of drywall dust and insulation lately.
Oh
yeah, you have, because you have your new building.
yeah, your new school's opening up, right?
So we'll give you a clip
so I
notes on
haven't
it.
really. Yeah, I want to know.
So basically, Disney has come up with this special, posh, wonderful, all-inclusive for around $6,000 a person. But
Crazy
you
overpriced.
get to become a part of this little show, but it's not necessarily a show. You're actually going on the Star Cruiser, and it's a resort, and there's all this kind of hidden things you can find. All of this other kind of things we can find, and it's just an amazing thing that we'd love to do sometime.
Yeah, this is one I've been looking up and researching because I have a son and he's not old enough for this yet. But I'm like, soon he will be, and we're gonna spend our time doing the dorkiest Star Wars stuff possible. Yeah. So it's one we're looking into. It's like a LARP. It's like a great big Star Wars LARP that Disney is hosting.
Yeah.
Yeah, you know, now that you mention it, I think I did hear something about it on Facebook. That sounds familiar. And yeah, I would do it. I think that would be so fun. I don't know why I wouldn't do it, other than maybe like it being really expensive. But he was like, I'll cover you and you just go and do the thing. I'd be like, yeah,
Well,
why
that's the part
not?
where eventually we get them to invite us because we're actual sword fighters, and they'd be like, "What do you guys think about it?" We're like, "We'll fund everything." We're like, "Oh, of course, that sounds great. We'll think about it." When really we're like, yeah, exactly. But that's what we're gonna do for our sword news this time. We normally go into a little bit more, but we've got to keep on going.
Yep,
Our
gotta
next
keep
part,
going.
we call it side quests. So we're side questions throughout our life because our life is our journey. So Jason hit us with that graphic. Excellent. So Kyle, what do you have going on?
All right, so I've been writing up all the scripts and all the shot lists and all the dorky behind the scenes stuff to get us ready for the Udemy course that we are hosting. So Spencer is a member of the Historical African Martial Arts Council. He's a council member, and we were like, "What course do we want to do as our online one first?" And so we're doing HAMA. We're going to do an extensive series that's going to be an educational how-to for getting into HAMA if you've never heard of it before, or it's a new thing that you could pick it up and kind of get started, which we're super excited about. Brittany, you teach online courses too, right?
Sort of, yeah. I did through the pandemic, through the entirety of the pandemic. I was doing a ton of online stuff. And then things got so busy just on the home front in person that I haven't done a lot of online classes lately. Mostly because, like I said before, I'm just totally engrossed in this renovation. So that's where I'm at.
Do you have any tips for us as we prep our online course?
Oh, yeah. Oh my gosh. Okay, so online stuff is a totally different beast, from my experience anyway. Because when you're teaching in person, you can engage with people and sort of shoot the shit a little bit. You know, there's natural pauses and stuff, and you can break and be like, okay, you guys work on this for 5 minutes and grab water or whatever. When you're doing an online thing, it's 100% on you. You have to be on the whole time. And so having a really well thought out and well organized plan or curriculum helps kind of pass that time more smoothly. Because when you're doing online, people notice immediately when there's a blip, right? Or there's a weird pause and you feel that a lot more. Whereas in person, it doesn't really work that way, right? They can read your body language, you can take pauses and do all this stuff. But when it's online, that focus is so on you, so you have to be really.
What did you change to adapt for that? Did you have anything that you did differently?
Yeah, I actually, and this is not some sword related thing. I was actually really careful about how I spoke, and I don't now I'm doing a bunch of likes and ums because it's very casual. But when I'm doing online classes, I try to slow down my speech a lot, especially because with the online stuff, if unless it's pre-recorded and then it's uploaded, that's fine. But if it's live, there's lags and glitches. So you want to slow down your speech a little bit, talk a little bit in a way that doesn't have ums and likes. So if you're thinking about something, you want to pause instead of being, it's much better to just pause and just flow.
Gather your thoughts and go. Yeah.
And having so I would have a whiteboard sort of off camera and it would track what my next topic was so I wouldn't forget stuff, and it helped me keep my thoughts really focused because it's very easy to start just tangenting. So that a lot.
Yeah, that's great advice. Thank you. I'll try my best to implement that. Spencer and I will. We'll be shooting that at the end of the month in Chicago, which we're pretty excited about. Yeah, the Chicago Swordplay Guild is letting us use their site to make our videos. It's really kind of them. Those guys, always friendly.
Awesome.
Yeah.
That's Jesse Kula's group, right?
Yep.
Yeah, he kicked my ass once year at one Trump out in Wisconsin. It was awesome.
He's so awesome. Love him to
Yeah,
death.
he's a great dude.
Yeah.
Spencer, what have you got going on, man?
Well, actually, we're gonna go with Brittany because we're gonna have to get our
all right.
time was. Brittany, what do you have planned? Like, what do you? I know you've been working on your Patreon a little bit more now. What?
Yeah.
Oops, okay, fine.
So yeah, I have a Patreon which I just launched, and that was a little bit anxiety-inducing. I wasn't sure how to do that, or like I've been doing so much content, and it's just sort of exploded in the last year and a half, where it takes up so much of my time now, and I'm buying microphones and lighting and all this stuff to make it more appealing for people, and I can spend more time doing it. And then eventually I was like, man, this is coming out of my pocket, like okay, you need something to help offset that cost. But it was really nerve-wracking for me to be like, hey, money. Like I was
Yeah.
comfortable with that, but I put it out there and people were extremely receptive, which took a lot of the anxiety away, and I was very grateful. So I'm working a lot on that. And then otherwise, doing the studio renovations, and then we're going to be hosting some really cool events coming up. We've got an event called Shield Knock in November that we're going to be doing, and it is a sword inclusive event. So it's not just a HEMA event, it's an everything event.
Ooh,
And we're
I
trying
like
to
everything.
yeah, we're going to get a whole bunch of instructors that are dedicated to shield stuff. So getting sword and buckler, sword and board, lots of other things. And I'm really excited because it's not tournaments, it's just workshops and what we call scenarios. So
Ooh.
we did the last time. So we've only run this event once before. I think it was 2017. So this is sort of like a bit of a necromancy happening. But we did some really cool scenarios where we took a sharp sword and hit a wood buckler to see how much the sword would bite into the shield rim, and if you could actually manipulate the sword if it was stuck in that shield, or doing things where it's like, okay, how do I draw my arming sword with my buckler actually attached? Because we see a lot of like visual representations historically of bucklers being like suspended on the belt. So how do we do that? How do we get that off? And doing experimental archaeology essentially on a bunch of systems that don't actually have a lot of source material. So I'm really excited about that.
I love
That
that.
sounds
That sounds
awesome.
amazing. That sounds
Yeah.
absolutely amazing. Well, it's amazing how fast time will fly by. Really, we're already almost 45 minutes in. Thank you, everyone, for tuning in. Brittany, thank you so much for joining us. We really appreciate it. Also, for you guys, make sure to check out her Instagram, saint.leafy
Yeah,
on
there's the
Instagram.
dot in there.
Yeah, it's super important. And also her YouTube, which she's been starting to hit again really hard. Which, what's your YouTube, actually, Brittany?
Leafy, I think.
I think so. That's what I want to make sure. I don't think there's a dot in this one, but make sure if you look up Saint Leafy, you'll find her thing. She has amazing part right at like 2,000 followers and just growing. So yeah, thank you so much for having us. We really appreciate it. So as always, this is Spencer, and I'm
Kyle.
Make sure to check out our Instagram, our YouTube channel, and we really appreciate you tuning in today. Kyle, you have your part.
You mean the part where I want to take us through the Wander On and Chop?
Yeah.
Yes, I would love to. All right, Brittany, so this is what we always do. You got to add the chop at the end of it. Are you with us?
I'm ready.
All right, you ready?
Mhm.
Until next time, Wander On
And
cut.
Check us out on Patreon. You can even sign up to get our Season 1 exclusive t-shirt. We are grateful for your contributions, and every bit helps us bring you more content. Like, subscribe, do all that stuff, but most importantly, wander on.